Hey, how's it going? Question for you. How big is your computer? No, I don't mean hard drive capacity, I mean dimensionally. If you're using a desktop, it's probably pretty big, but that brings me to what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I'm not alone. I've asked fellow YouTubers Stephen Hackett from 512 Pixels and Druaga1 to help me out. Steve Jobs admired many things about design, but two of them were the cube shape and silent operation, aka a computer that cools itself without a fan. Enter the Power Mac G4 Cube. Let's travel back to September 18th, 1990. Steve Jobs was working at Next, his other company, and they were just releasing the NeXTcube, a $10,000 workstation computer that had the design of a cube. And a few years after Steve Jobs returned to Apple, this little bad boy was introduced at Macworld New York 2000. And I think it's fair to say that the whole NeXTcube design was kind of the roots of the DNA for this machine. And when Steve Jobs showed this off, people initially were quite stunned with how much horsepower was in such a small package. But unfortunately, well, fortunately for some, the Cube only sold for about a year. But the whole DNA of this Cube is probably still alive today in the Mac Mini, which Apple still sells. Well, kind of. I mean, it hasn't been updated in about 4 years, but Apple still sells the Mac Mini. And another historic feature of this Cube that kind of lives today still is the easy open design, and I think that is kind of the root of the shell that comes off the Mac Pro. But we'll talk about more of that design stuff in a minute. The weird thing is that when the Cube stopped selling, it wasn't discontinued. It was suspended indefinitely, according to Apple's website. Suspended indefinitely. So does that mean maybe the Cube could come back one day? It's something to think about. But for now, let's stay in the past and take a closer look at this Mac. Now, the cool thing about this design was that it had the horsepower of a full-size Power Mac G4 desktop, but in an 8-inch cube. All of that performance was squeezed into such a small design, and that 8-inch cube was suspended in this beautiful crystal clear enclosure. And on a desk, it just looked freaking beautiful. Heck, nowadays it still looks beautiful, not just in 2000, but today. So the design was pretty cool looking in my book. This particular G4 Cube is equipped with a 450 MHz PowerPC G4 processor and a gigabyte of RAM. On the graphics side, it featured a Rage 128 Pro video card. So in our last episode of Vintage Apple Vault, we talked about the iBook G3 clamshell and how it introduced the airport wireless networking. Well, this G4 Cube actually featured an airport card as well, and on the sides there's little circles, and that's actually where the wireless antennae are, so it does work with Wi-Fi. So in terms of I/O, this computer had Ethernet on it, FireWire 400, 12 megabit per second USB, Apple Display Connector, VGA, and a 56K modem.
This is the power connector. That's right, it has an external supply, not quite as fancy as the Mac Pro. Oh yeah. And about that supply, it's massive.
So the Apple Display Connector, or ADC port, that was actually kind of cool because it was kind of an all-in-one solution. Video, power, and USB all traveled over a single connection. So if you plugged in a monitor, say an Apple Studio display for example, everything would just run on one cable. Video, USB, and power. And you would just plug it right into the G4 Cube. I would stand it up, but unfortunately, my leg broke. So, break a leg? No, don't say that. Note that there is no headphone port. Even though this was a much older computer when headphone jacks were still a thing, there actually wasn't one on this particular machine. Nor was there a built-in speaker, which is very unusual because most Macs have a built-in speaker. This one was an exception. However, you could get these really cool Pro speakers that go with the computer, and they're made by Harman Kardon. They're really clear and crystally looking, and they sound pretty good. Mine are kind of getting a little wilted, but they actually work really well. A killer feature of this design was it had no fan. This whole thing doesn't have a single fan inside of it, even though it's really small. There's like a core inside of here where the air just travels through the center, and it's hollow. but there's no fan. Steve Jobs was very particular about making a computer as quiet as possible, so this thing was built with no fan.
And it does bear repeating that that is a pretty massive heatsink. It kind of needs it. PowerPC processors get pretty hot.
So here's a cool thing about this computer. The slot loading disk drive. You may not even see it, but it is kind of hidden up here. It's kind of like a toaster. Take the disk, drop it in, and it just goes in like that. Aesthetically, that was kind of cool. Another unique part of the design was it had no physical power button. The power symbol on top actually had a little bit of a touch sensor on it, so when you touched it, a light would light up underneath it, but it didn't physically retract on a spring or anything like a button or a switch. It was a touch-sensitive power button, basically.
There's the cool button, by the way. Who knows how that works?
And the last thing I want to show with you guys, I saved the best for last, trust me. You could flip the computer over, and there was this little handle you could pull out on the bottom. And you could literally lift the internal components right out of the case for easy access to everything on the inside.
I have much appreciation for Apple, in that they made it so it's easy to get inside. And by easy, I mean easy. Not many Macs are really easy to get into.
And you literally lift all of the technology out.
Yeah, that one kind of blew the audience's mind away when it was introduced at the keynote. Do you want to see more Cube? I know you do. Stick around because I collaborated with Stephen Hackett from 512 Pixels and Druaga1. Stephen has a NeXTcube that he's going to share with you guys, and Druaga1 has a G4 Cube as well, and he's going to share some stuff with you guys. So stick around for that, and then after, we're going to be showing the audience photo submissions for Show Off Your Setup. Plus, at the end of today's episode, we got some more funny bloopers for you guys, so stick around, let's take a look at the collectors.
Hey smokers, Druaga1 here, and today we're going to be taking a look at my G4 Cube. For those of you who don't know me, I've been doing videos on YouTube for a little over 10 years, but only in the past 4 have I done anything specifically dedicated to computers. Most of the time I'm trying to install things on things that really shouldn't work, but they end up working anyway, or at least sometimes. I'm pretty well known for my tendency to install SSDs in as many things as I can. So other than the G4 Cube, I have a bunch of other things in my collection, but some of the more prominent things that I consider more of, say, prized possessions are the following. An old yellowed Apple IIe from the 80s. An Apple 2GS with a 4MB memory expansion card. A pristine and non-yellowed Macintosh SE30, which didn't really fit. Now mainly I don't use this computer very much except for shooting videos and demonstrating a few things. Back when it was up and running, it's not running right now, I had macOS 9 installed on an SSD that I installed in there. I used it to test out certain games like Doom and Unreal and stuff like that that was mainly gaming for testing purposes. As a secondary, it sort of works as my macOS 9 machine, but I haven't had too much need for it lately. Two of my favorite features are right here on the top, actually. Surprisingly, it is actually its fanless design. Pretty much you just let it sit there. There's no fan in it at all. All the heat just radiates up. And the power button, which has literally no profile, it's just touch sensitive, you're just tapping on a piece of plastic there. So, pretty cool. Right here you'll notice that something is missing, and that's the hard drive. Don't have one in here right now, but previously I had a Radeon SSD installed in this thing, and yes, it did work, albeit with not too much of a performance improvement over a mechanical hard disk, but it actually did work just so long as I used a SATA to IDE adapter, because that's what's inside. If you look deep inside there, you can see that that's your IDE connection and what looks like a wireless card making a photobomb there, and the very dead CMOS battery. Here's the other side if you're curious on how the drive's attached to the logic board. If I was into Macs a little earlier in my life, this would probably be one of the computers I would have begged my parents to get for me. It is, one of the more pro-end machines, sort of. It is the Power Mac series after all. And with this kind of design, I would have been all over this way back in the day. In the future, I might be able to get some use out of it, if nothing more than a hand dryer. Just kidding, don't do that. So thanks everybody for taking a look at my G4 Cube.
Hi, my name is Stephen Hackett. I'm the host of the 512 Pixels YouTube channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about the NeXTcube. Now if you're familiar with Apple history at all, you'll know that shortly after the Macintosh's ho-hum launch, the board of Apple actually let go Steve Jobs. They met and voted him out of the company. The guy who co-founded it, the guy who worked on the Lisa and the Macintosh, suddenly gone. Now Jobs did not take this lying down. He gathered some engineers, some from Apple, some from other companies, and created a new computer company that he named Next. And the idea behind Next Computer was actually pretty simple. Build workstation-grade computers, power them with a Unix-based operating system, and sell them to higher education and to researchers. Now, unfortunately, that plan didn't necessarily work out. The software is the big success story here though. NeXTSTEP would go on to kind of morph into OpenStep, a version of it that would run across multiple hardware platforms, and it was all purchased by Apple in the late 1990s. NeXTSTEP became the underpinnings to OS X, and through that decision, Apple sprung back to life. The technology is now found running on our iPhones and iPads, on our Apple Watches, on our Apple TVs. Even the HomePod runs a variant of software that started at Next. That's an unbelievable legacy. Now the other half of Next's plan was to sell hardware, like I said, workstation grade computers. That meant being powered by the Motorola 68040, a processor also used by Apple at the time. You could get up to 64 megabytes of RAM, an optional hard drive, and a 256 magneto-optical drive. Now that technology never took off, but it makes these computers a little unusual. Now Next sold two form factors of computer. The first was called the Slab, sort of a traditional pizza box design a CRT would sit on top of. But the far more interesting one is the NeXTcube. Built of magnesium, this is a 1 foot black cube that still looks great today. It's like if Darth Vader designed a computer, he would design this. The cube should be an interesting and familiar shape to Apple fans. Of course, you have that iconic New York Apple Store, but you also have the Power Mac G4 Cube that Apple released in the early 2000s. Now, the idea behind the two computers actually wasn't all that different. You could have all your components easily accessible, but in a machine that you wanted out on your desk because it was beautiful. Like I said, the hardware side of Next never really took off. The Cube, for instance, was $6,500 at launch in the late 1980s. That was a ton of money back in the day for a computer whose operating system was basically unknown. After several years, Next did upgrade the Cube and the Slab, but eventually shuttered its hardware division altogether, focusing on software. But that doesn't mean the NeXTcubes are gone. There are still a few out there. I got mine from someone on Twitter just a few months ago. Mine unfortunately doesn't run, but I have spent time running NeXTSTEP in emulation, and it's like running some sort of bizarro beta OS X. I guess in a way, that's exactly what it is.
Thank you, Druaga and Stephen, for showing that stuff off. That was great. But guess what? I know you guys watching, you guys have cool stuff you want to show off too. So let's take a look at the most recent submissions for Show Off Your Setup. And the first Show Off Your Setup winner for this episode is Tommy. Thanks for submitting your photo. It has a G4 Cube in it, so that's perfect for today. And I see a MacBook Pro, but I only see the display of the MacBook Pro and not the actual MacBook Pro itself. What kind of dark sorcery is this? My goodness. And I wanted to get a PC setup in here for this week, so Harry, aka Pudding, submitted his setup. Pudding is actually his username, no joke. That's pretty cool. And I like the whole kind of square geometric cubicle kind of shape of everything going on here. So yes, a very cubular episode today. Thank you guys for your submissions. So those were the submissions for Show Off Your Setup on this episode of Vintage Apple Vault. But guess what? Feel free to submit more with the link down in the description below, because we may show yours on the next episode. So feel free to submit your photos right now. So there you have it, the Power Mac G4 Cube. This Mac definitely landed on Apple's list of short-lived products, but it remains iconic. And in my opinion, for the Cube, it was more form over function. That's what made it so beautiful, that's what made it so iconic, but that's also what contributed to its short life. So, what's next for Vintage Apple Vault? Heck, what's next for the Computer Clan? Well, that brings me to the most important question I've ever asked in my entire YouTube career. Are you a die-hard computer techie? Do you want more vintage tech videos, more laughs, more parodies, and do you want to grow this community of techies to rule the world? Yeah, you do. Well, you can make that difference right now. You literally have the power to keep the lights on. You can be one of the very first ones to donate to the Computer Clan's brand new Patreon account with a link in the description below. Donate $1, heck, donate $10,000, and know that every single penny is devoted to making this the best tech channel for all of your computer fixes, because honestly, neglecting your tech addiction is just wrong. So hurry and be one of the true computer techies to donate right now to this brand new Patreon account with the link in the description down below. And brag about how much you're changing the tech world, and heck, if you're one of the first 14 people to donate, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode of Vintage Apple Vault. With your help, this is going to be epic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the not too distant future, and on Patreon. Alright, to be or not to be, that is the question. You sunk my battleship. Cut! Screw up the joke even, come on. From sea to side. Yeah! This is the Apple IIc, yes, 2. You put a face on the slate, yeah. Yes. Yeah, I don't think I should be holding these here. Slate out. This don't feel right. Good circle take. Yeah.